Welcome, dear participants. Welcome to this last session of self-improvement to the Quran series. We have been studying various passages in this blessed month of Ramadan, and today is the last of these sessions. I do hope that we have been able to benefit from these discussions. So let us begin with this last passage. This is Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 262 to 265. The verses read, الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله ثم لا يتبعون ما أنفقوا منا ولا أذى لهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Those who spend their wealth in the way of God, then do not follow this spending by reminders of their generosity or by hurting others, have their reward with their Lord, and they shall have nothing to fear there, nor shall they ever be sorrowful. This is a very important area that we have to concentrate on vis-a-vis charity, vis-a-vis giving in the way of God. One of the things that mars this charity is that at times we remind people of our generosity. So once we have done a favor to them, we just don't stop at that. And at times we try to boast this, and not only boastfully present this, but try to overall the other person that, look here, remember that I did such and such a good thing to do to you. And this is what totally mars our charity. We have to be very careful that if we have done something, then it is for God that we have done something. So reminding people of our generosity is a very mean thing. And the Quran says that this is something which is absolutely not on. And if you spend your wealth for the cause of God, then it has to be without reminders of this generosity. So remember, when you are giving something to people, accepting charity, even if you don't tell other people that it is charity, whenever it's a person accepting something from ourselves, this is more of a you have to go back on your self-esteem a little. So we have to understand that people have already sacrificed their self-esteem when they accept something. But on top of that, if we start reminding them in the future that what we did to them in the past, and this makes a very bad show. This is something which is really telling, and something which is, as I said, very mean and should not be done in any case. And in fact, the Almighty says if a person avoids this, then his reward is with God. Lahum ajruhum inda rabbihim la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun. قول معروف ومغفرة خير من صدقة يتبعها أذى والله غني حليم. A kind word, and at unpleasant instances, a little forgiveness is better than charity followed by inflicting hurt. And you should know that God is self-sufficient from such charity. So one of the things that again mars our charity is that we tend to be a little harsh on people who we tend to refuse, or we think that we are not able to give what they ask. So instead of being harsh, look what the Quran says. It says, "Qawlun ma'rufun wa maghfira." Instead of being harsh, instead of being blunt and refusing the other person in a way that is insulting, it is much better that what we do in this regard is that we say something in a very polite way, and of course should be a word of forgiveness, which means that when people insist on asking, it does has an effect on us, and therefore we are able to we are at times not able to control ourselves. So the Almighty says that on such instances we have to control our emotions, and a kind word at such an unpleasant instance and a little forgiveness is something which should be our motto. And if we do this, then we would be saving ourselves, and we would be saving and protecting our charity. Otherwise it will cause hurt, and this hurt is something which can really be something very damaging to a person's self-esteem. And remember that if we are doing this, we are not doing this we are not scoring against God. In fact, God has provided us with an opportunity to spend in His way. So therefore, it's like we being given this chance to do a favor. And it's not that we are doing a favor to someone else. In fact, it is God who is doing a favor to us by giving us this opportunity to spend in His way. Otherwise, as the verse says, "Wallahu ghaniyun halim," He is totally self-sufficient, and He knows that as far as charity is concerned, and as far as all noble acts are concerned. In fact, it's not that God needs them. He is self-sufficient, and he is also someone who is not going to be in any way bothered if you don't do that. He's also gracious and he's magnanimous. And then, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu la tubtilu sadaqatikum bil manni wal aza kallazi yunfiqu malahu ri'a an-nas wa la yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir. Believers, do not waste your charity by reminders of generosity and by hurting others like those who spend their wealth to show off before others, uh, and believe neither in God nor in the last day. So, believers, do not waste your charity by reminders of generosity and by hurting others like those who spend their wealth to show off. So, you see, again, the same topic is discussed once again in a slightly more harsh tone, in a more grave tone, in a more stern way. That do not mar your charity. In fact, the words are, do not waste your charity by reminding other people of your generosity. La tubtilu sadaqatikum bil manni wal aza. And in this way, you cause hurt to people. When you are reminding people, you are causing this hurt. And also refrain from boasting and showing off. It's like when you do this, kallazi yunfiqu malahu ri'a an-nas wa la yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir. And basically, this is the conduct of those who actually spend their wealth to show off before others and believe neither in God nor the last day. Again, something which we have to be very heedful of, that spending in the name of God, spending for God, is something which should best remain between ourselves and the Almighty. The more it is brought before people, the more we boast about it, the more we show off about it, it's going to lose its whole importance. You see, as we know that the basic objective of religion, in all religious religion, is inner purification, is tazkiyah. And when we start reminding people of our generosity, and when we start boasting of our generosity, both these things, they have a very telling effect and a negative effect. And as the Quran says, our charity is going to go waste in this regard. Yes, there are instances which the Quran itself has pointed out, and it says, "Allazina yunfiquna amwalahum bil-layli wan-nahari sirran wa alaniya." Those people who spend their wealth day by day and by night, and they do so openly and they do so secretly. So yes, at times when you do so openly, which is meant to inspire the people and motivate your people, perhaps your children, perhaps your people who are in your surroundings, that is something which is, of course, perfectly okay. But when the purpose is to show off, and when the purpose is to let people know how generous you are, then the Quran says that this is like wasting your charity. It's not going to yield any good for you. So charity, as it is at best, is charity given in a way that you and your God only knows about it. And if at all you have to tell about it to other people, or you have to disclose it, then it should be for the purpose of inspiring others, for the purpose of motivating others, especially if there are your young ones, your younger generation, so that they could be motivated and inspired by this act of charity. And the Quran says, "Kallazi yunfiqu malahu ri'a an-nas wa la yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir." So this is the example of those people who show off boastfully, and neither they believe in God nor the last day. And then their parable is cited. فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ صَفْوَانٍ عَلَيْهِ تُرَابٌ فَأَصَابَهُ وَابِلٌ فَتَرَكَهُ صَلْدًا لَا يَقْدِرُونَ عَلَى شَيْءٍ مِّمَّا كَسَبُوا. So the example of such people is like a large rock covered with soil. When a heavy shower falls upon it, and it leaves it hard and bare. So what means is that a heavy shower comes, it's not going to be of any use to it. And on the day of judgment, they will gain nothing from what they have earned. And in reality, God never guides such ungrateful people. لا يقدرون على شيء مما كسبوا والله لا يهدي القوم الكافرين. So the example, as you can see, is the example which is cited here, that it's a large rock covered with soil, and when a heavy shower falls upon it, it leaves it hard and bare. So it has no roots. So like dust and like mud that is soiled on a hard place, whenever there is a downpour, it is something which exposes that rock, and nothing is rooted in it, and nothing which is firmed in it. And this is the example of our charity and what it will come to. And on the day of judgment, as this verse says, they will gain nothing. La yaqdiruna ala shay'in mimma kasabu, wallahu la yahdil qawmal kafirin. And in reality, God never guides such ungrateful people. So it is something that we have to understand, that when we show off uh, our wealth, then this has absolutely no grounding with God. It's like a downpour which exposes the rock on which mud or clay is covered by these things, and the downpour is not able to do anything for it. So it's not going to be of benefit. Just as this downpour was not benefit for that rock, our spending would not be beneficial for us in the hereafter. Wallahu la yahdil qawmal kafirin. And the word kafir here means actually ungrateful. So the word has two meanings. One is to deny the truth, and the other is to be ungrateful. Here it is used in the second meaning. So if we are ungrateful to God, then this is what's going to happen. By being ungrateful to God, what is being pointed out here is that we were blessed with favors, we were blessed with God's gifts, but we refused to spend them. And when we did spend them, it was for show off, or to make claims of our generosity on other people. And such spending is something which is not going to be of any use to us. And as the verse says, that God does not give guidance. He does not guide such people who are ungrateful. And of course, who are ungrateful would mean that instead of sharing their favors, instead of sharing what they had with other people, they ended up boasting about it. They ended up by reminding people of their generosity, and this was not going to earn them anything at all. And then on the contrary, another parable is stated by the Quran, which is for the opposite type of people. So, فَمَثَلُ الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُمْ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ وَتَثْبِيتًا مِنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ كَمَثَلِ جَنَّةٍ بِرَبْوَةٍ أَصَابَهَا وَابِلٌ فَآتَتْ أُكُلَهَا ضِعْفَيْنِ فَإِنْ لَمْ يُصِبْهَا وَابِلٌ فَطَلٌّ وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. The example of those who spend their wealth to win the pleasure of God and to firmly make themselves adhere to the truth is that of an orchard which is on high ground and level ground. If a heavy shower falls upon it, it yields twice its normal produce. And even if a heavy shower does not fall upon it, a drizzle proves sufficient. So this is the example of those who spend their wealth to please God and to increase their faith and to make themselves more adherent to the truth. So for them, it says that if a downpour comes on them, it yields twice the produce. And a slight drizzle also would be enough. If that heavy downpour doesn't come, even that slight drizzle would be able to produce sufficient, which of course means that this is the example of people who spend in the way of God in the right way. They follow all the protocols. Then for them, it is like a heavy downpour, which produces a lot of yield and produce. And if that downpour is not available and you just have a drizzle, even that becomes sufficient, which means that the ground on which the rain falls is so fertile that even a small amount of rain would be sufficient for it, which in other words would mean that if you are people who spend for the cause of the Almighty, if you spend in a way that you would like yourself to be more strong and more resilient and more attached towards the truth, and your spending is not for the purpose of showing off, and your spending is not for the purpose of telling other people how generous you are and reminding them of their generosity, then this is what is going to happen. It's going to be something which is very fruitful. Charity, dear viewers, is something which is mentioned at so many instances in the Quran, and the Quran has made it clear that charitable acts are acts in which a person is so sincere in his devotion to the Almighty that his devotion to the Almighty and his sharing of blessings with the underprivileged is something which comes to him naturally. So when we are blessed with favors, when we are blessed with God's so many numerous gifts, it is but natural that we should start thinking of other people who are without them. And the most natural way to think about them is, as we know, is al-aqrab fal-aqrab, which means from the nearest to the next nearest. And as the famous adage goes, charity begins at home. Yes, it does begin at home, because people who are right under our nose, living in our houses, maybe our domestic staff, and maybe who are people who are who we tender and take care of, so they could be in a spot of bother. So it's a question to be of always being in a position to gauge people who might be in need. And remember, there are so many people who would not come to you for their need. It is we who have to reach out to them. And it is for such people that we have to be very, very sensitive and conscious about. So this brings us to an end to this passage, this discussion, and this also brings us to an end to this series that we started in Ramadan. We do pray, and I do pray that Quran becomes a constant. It figures in our lives constantly, and it's not just that we study this book as we have studied or read it out in Ramadan. It should become a permanent part of our lives, and however much we can do, even if it is a little bit of reading the Quran. The advice is that for the rest of the year, let's take out 5-10 minutes every day to read out the Quran from anywhere, because this is a book which is not only something which guides us and it urges us to do what right is, but at the same time, it has the potential of bringing us very close to the Almighty, something that we all need. So thank you very much, and we can now open the floor for questions.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad and dear participants. With this conclusion of self-improvement through the Quran series, on the behalf of the beneficiaries and participants of the program, I would like to offer my profound gratitude to your commitment to the cause of teaching the Word of God. Your research, years of research, and your depth of understanding of the sources of Deen and the means to present in the limited time of 30 minutes for these 27 days are much appreciated. With this, I would like to open the floor for questions. For the first question, I would like to call Nushaba. Please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर। सर सबसे पहले तो शुक्रिया आपका कि आपने हमें इतना सब कुछ सिखाया रमजान में। अल्लाह ताला हमें इस पे अमल करने की तौफीक दे, आमीन। और साथ साथ क्वेश्चन मेरा ये कि कुछ लोग अपने माँ बाप के लिए या किसी के लिए उम्रा या हज करते हैं जो फौत हो गए हों, तो क्या उनको वो सवाब पहुंचता है? इसी तरह नफल पढ़ के भेजते हैं या कुरान पढ़ के, तो इसकी कोई है हदीस में या कुरान में, या ये वैसे ही है?
You see, as far as reciting the Quran and trying to transfer the reward of what we have read to our dear departed, it has no basis in our sources anywhere. What we know from the Quran is Laisa lil-insani illa ma sa'a. A person will only get in the hereafter for what he himself had strived for in this world. So something that you had initiated in this world, only that is going to benefit you in the hereafter. Anyone who's doing something on your behalf is going to benefit that person. But of course, the person who has already passed away, unless he had done something or she had done something which is of benefit to the world, like for example, if they have taught something to people or their own children, they have taught values, they have taught significantly good habits, for example, if they have been able to inculcate what right is and righteousness in people or their own children or their own surroundings. So whatever they have initiated, so as long as people follow what they did in their lives, they are going to get a reward for that. However, once they pass away, the door closes for them.
So sir, even like Hajj and Umrah, like some people are doing Hajj.
Well, actually, there are people who do so, who say that, well, there is this thing called Hajj Badal, or and I personally am not very convinced about this. And I think that if a person had the intention of doing Hajj in his own lifetime, in her own lifetime, he had or she had all the intention, but because of some reason, he or she could not do it. It could be health, it could be resources, it could be the circumstances. I think the reward for the intention they would already get that reward for the intention. So in the presence of this this huge motivation and its inspiration from God that you will get the reward of your intention, I don't see how people who would be doing such things on behalf of other people would benefit the deceased.
Okay, thank you, sir. और सर आपसे एक रिक्वेस्ट करनी थी, आपने इंग्लिश में तो ये स्टडी का प्रोग्राम स्टार्ट किया है, क्या आप उर्दू में भी स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं इसको? क्योंकि
I think we have been doing this in the Urdu language because we do this every Ramadan. So the last Ramadan was in English. This one is in English. So other than that, we have. Once a month, yes, once a month we are actually doing this study circle in which we study the Quran.
No, sir, which you start already, you know, the weekly classes for the Quran, understanding the Quran one? So is that possible that you can
let's see, because you see, at the moment, there are a lot of other people from our institute who are offering these or similar classes in the Urdu language. The purpose of offering this in the English language was to reach out to the English-speaking audience that we find in abundance in many parts of the world. So it's just like a division of labor that we are doing. Many of my colleagues are doing it in the Urdu language. So the need for the English language was there. So that is why we are trying to fill that gap.
Is there any, because I refer my mom to Ghamidi Saab, and she said like his language, Urdu language, is still like hard to understand. Is there any scholar?
There are many programs. I think you should just need to go to the websites of our institutions. There are various organizations all over the world. Just check their websites. A lot of programs were done in this Ramadan, and they are going to continue after Ramadan also. Just keep checking the websites.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rafia Khwaja, you may go ahead now.
Shehzad, I wanted to ask you that like I have also missed several fasts in the past, and also I've missed prayers in the past. So how do I make them up? अगर बचपन में अगर इंसान ने मिस कर दिया हो, और तो उसको, does one need to make it up, or can just one ask God for pardon and then just become regular in your fasting and prayers?
I think that once you become regular in your fasts, and if you have to miss your fast after becoming regular because of, reasons which women have to go through in their own life, like for example their own cycles, then they have to make up for those missed fasts once they become regular, and they think that, well, they have missed their fast, so they need to keep them later on. But as for the other fasts that they have missed in their life, for example, they started off late or maybe in their middle ages to observe rituals like the prayer or the fast, I think that in such instances it is best to ask for God's forgiveness, and whatever you can do to make up for those. It's not possible to make up for the missed prayers. Of course, if the fast can somehow be made up, maybe like keeping a couple of them every month, so it's like a small compensation that you might do, but at the same time also repenting before God and asking for His forgiveness, and as far as future is concerned, being more punctual in these in observing these rituals.
So that's sometimes due to health reasons you missed fast or namaz also, not
Right.
due to laziness, like due to certain conditions. So does one have to make them up, or can just one become
See, when
regular
your health,
once you're okay?
if your health is compromised, and it's like a permanent feature that you would never be able to keep fast, for example, then all you do is you give an atonement which is called fidya. But if there is this chance that you'll be able to recover from your illness, and in future you'll be in a position to keep the fast, the Quran says it is better to keep the fasts, and they are in fact like a debt that we have, that we owe to God. However, if the situation is that health does not allow us to do so, then the option is to pay fidya.
So namazon ka kya kare, the prayers that
So
one
I
has
have been
to-
answering this question also. If the prayers are quite a lot, then you just ask for forgiveness, and the nafils and the sunnahs that you pray after besides the farz prayer, you can make this intention that these should be regarded as some of the missed prayers of the past. I think I find this to be the best solution, because we have got nothing from the Prophet in this regard regarding missed prayers. But as far as I said, it could be that you just ask for forgiveness, but because the temperament of religion is that if you can atone for something and make up for something which is missed, then it is better to do it. So if you can just make this intention that whatever nafils that you are praying should be counted as your previously missed prayers, then I think that would be nice.
And just one more question, as far as charity is, can one just give charity to whoever you consider is the most likely to benefit, the organizations, whoever you consider, whether it's Indus Hospital or whoever.
Right. What else can we do? What else can we do? Of course, it's our personal satisfaction, and if you are going to give it to a big organization or maybe to a place to some other charity, and a reasonable amount of investigation is always in order to see if they are transparent in their undertakings, and generally such big organizations are, so it's no harm in giving our charity to such organizations.
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. Thank you.
Baran Nashur, you may go ahead now.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, I want to thank you for this amazing series. You answered a lot of questions of mine as well. Sir, my question is about, there are a lot of unknowns and doubts within religion and within certain prohibitions. For example, a lot of scholars say that, for example, music is prohibited, or keeping a dog is prohibited. And these are like unknown for the layman such as myself. How do I, like, if I unconsciously commit a sin, like for example, if music would be prohibited, but I'm not sure if it's actually prohibited or not, what should I do? And would it actually be a sin if I listen to music?
So you see, these are about, I mean, if you ask me, 30 to 35 issues which are contentious. So perhaps the best thing that you can do is that once and for all, just study them and study both contesting opinions, and just find out which one of the opinions that you study holds good to you or convinces you, and just follow that opinion. So as I said, it's just a question of enumerating those issues. They're not more than 30 to 35, and one by one, just study the arguments and the reasonings which are offered by both sides, and just follow the one that makes you feel intellectually convinced.
But because, for example, as a person as myself, I don't have the knowledge required to do the research. So a lot of people say you should just listen to the scholar because they are trained to make those
what I'm
decisions.
saying is, you don't need to do research, Baran. What you need to do, I mean, you don't need to do any research. What you need to do is just study the research of two people who might be differing with one another. For example, there is a person who would say that music is not allowed. So you ask, or you study the reasoning that he puts forth. And there's another person who says that music is allowed, and you study his reasoning as well. And you don't need to do your research. All that you need to do is just read the research of these two scholars and see which one of them makes more sense to you. And then you can follow that.
Okay. And for example, if I would choose, for example, the wrong opinion, like it would, if I say, okay, I think this is the truth.
I understand. Yeah. The Almighty says that if you sincerely end up choosing the wrong opinion, He's not going to penalize you for it, because you tried your best, and human intellect can always falter. So therefore, in this regard, the reasonable amount of concession would be given to you, and you will not be penalized.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Naveed Irfan, you may go ahead now.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातहू.
जी वालेकुम अस्सलाम.
जी डॉक्टर, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया इस सीरीज का, और तस्किया के ऊपर जो ये सीरीज रही, इंशाल्लाह ये मेरे लिए तो काफी फायदेमंद रहेगी. जी, और मेरा सवाल ये था कि मेरी बेटी है, मतलब 3 बेटियां हैं, और बड़ी बेटी मेरी लगभग 13 साल की हो गई है. तो मैं मतलब हाउ टू इंट्रोड्यूस देम टू कुरान, कैसे उनका तारुफ कराऊं मैं, मतलब थोड़ा सा, जैसे उन्हें कभी दिया मैंने पढ़ने को, तो बहुत ज्यादा मतलब तर्जुमे से पढ़ने में उन्हें कनेक्ट नहीं किया. तो क्या एक बेहतर तरीका हो सकता है?
There are 2 steps before you introduce them to the Quran or give them the Quran as a book to read. The first is that give them a good introduction to the Quran, which introduces them to the whole book, the theme of the book, the history of the book, the language, the contents. So like an overview, when you study a big subject, it's always good to introduce the readers to its general, you can say, the way it has been written by the creator. So we have published some books on this topic. I'm sure there are others available as well. So the first thing is just introduce your children to the Quran as in general terms through some booklets. And the second is that give them some selections from the Quran to read before you plunge them into the whole book. An overview of some of the selected verses of the Quran. Again, there have been a lot of books which are printed in this regard, in which you can just, like a summary of it's not a summary of the Quran, it's like an overview, I would say, a brief selection which is available. And once they have gone through both these things, then you ask them to study the Quran. And once you do so, I do hope that they will enjoy the Quran.
Jazakallah khair. Shukriya.
Thank you so much. Simon Asif, you may go ahead now.
I have two questions. The first one is from the discussion that you were just having regarding the fact that if we miss a prayer, may it be through laziness or for whatever reason, so is it allowed to make it up through qaza namaz? Is there a qaza namaz in Jihad Islam? That's my first question.
Yes, it is. Yes, of course. I mean, this is an obligation that we owe to our Creator. So if we have missed a prayer for any reason, whether it's laziness or whether for any other reason, we should try to make it up as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is regarding zakat. I was recently told that zakat should be given to directly to to person and avoid giving it to organizations. Although they might be doing good work, but still those organizations, for example, might, if they're buying a machine with it. For a hospital or building a room in a school, those become assets. So, is it acceptable to give zakat to them under the circumstances?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, zakat can be given to projects. It can be given to individuals. It all depends on the need and on the situation that you are in. At times, if you support organizations, we just talked about the Indus Hospital, which is doing a tremendous service. They offer free services. We have Transparent Hands, another very extraordinary organization, and which they do free surgeries for people. So all these organizations which are carrying out charitable work, absolutely fine to give them. And yes, you can give them to the individuals as well. So even if they buy machinery which become become assets, so what? Because you see, those assets are going to be used to serve the needs of the people who are there as sick, and they are going to be treated with them. So that doesn't matter if, for example, if they construct a building from it, if they construct a hospital from it, if they construct an orphanage from it, what else is going to be, more useful for such people? So both of them have their importance and their needs. So it all depends who you come across and how you can make yourself your money available to.
Okay, their logic normally is that when you do that, most of these hospitals, for example, or educational institutes, yes, they use it for the poor people, for providing free education or free healthcare. But at the same time, they charge some people who can afford it. So it's being used for both, that machine, that place, or that institute is being utilized by both types of people.
So remember, if they are earning, if there are charitable institutions who are earning from the rich people, the earning is to maintain that hospital or to maintain that educational institute, which is going to provide for the poor as well. So, it's like a service that is being done in which you are charging the rich people, and that is something which is, of course, going to go into the pockets of the poor as well, indirectly. So I don't see any logic in denying such institutions any. So remember, the institution has to be a charitable institution. It should not be a profit based institution in which you are earning, because in that case it would be like a business. So we're talking about charities, like, for example, there are so many charities like Al Khidmat Foundation, we have Shaukat Khanum Foundation, we have AD Foundation. So all these are charitable institutions which have hospitals, which have ambulances. They have a staff to maintain. Of course, if you don't have a driver to run an ambulance 24 hours, how can you maintain an ambulance? And for that, you need a driver, and you have to pay his salary as well. Similarly, you have to put petrol in the ambulance also. So I think all these are ancillary expenditures which are needed to provide that service.
Thank you. I understand. I agree. Just wanted to clarify that. Jazakallah.
Fabia Niazi, you may ask your question.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम रहमतुल्लाह। भाई साहब, कल के सेशन में एक मेंबर ने सवाल किया था, इमामत के दौरान खातून जो है सर ढांपना ज़रूरी है या नहीं, तो आपने उसके जवाब में बताया था कि ये ज़रूरी नहीं है। इसमें क्या हिकमत पेश नज़र थी, आप इसकी वजाहत कर देंगे?
It has to be the other way around. If something is to be compulsory, then something has to be, made compulsory by the Quran or by the Prophet. In the absence of something which is not compulsory or which has not been made mandatory by God or His Prophet, how can we do so? So you see, I'm no one to make a prohibition. I'm no one to lift the prohibition. So all that we can do is we have to follow what God and His Prophet says. If they have not made something mandatory, how can we make something mandatory?
ये चीजें इस तरह की नहीं होती कि ये चूंकि चलती चली आ रही होती हैं
So there are cultural things. So you see, a lot of things are cultural. A lot of things they owe to our practice. But you see, there's a difference between religion and culture. I would agree that it's a good thing. It's a recommended thing that a woman should cover her hair when her head when she's praying. But if you ask me if it's compulsory, I will say no. I would always recommend it that yes, they should do it because it's a sign of modesty. It's a sign of good etiquette. You're standing before the Lord of the worlds. But if you say that, well, would my prayer would be invalid if I don't cover my head? I would say no, because you see, to invalidate something, you need to have proof from God. I mean, you have to understand this, that you see, we do become accustomed to our traditions, to what our parents have been telling us, to what the society is doing. But we always need to critically evaluate whether what we are doing is something which is sanctioned by religion or is it just our culture.
वैसा मेरे ज़हन में ये बात आ रही है कि ये चीज़ें चूँकि पहले से चलती चली आ रही थी, इसलिए शायद अल्लाह ताला ने इनकी वज़ाहत कुरान में नहीं की, क्योंकि ये चलती
I mean, you
चली
see,
आ रही है।
if there were some things that were part of our culture and society, then you see, if the author did not want them to be discussed in the Quran, then it only means that they continued as traditions. They had nothing of religious origin in them. If they were to be made at something religious, you see, the Quran has talked about the prayer in detail. It is the most discussed topic in the Quran, and it is perhaps the most discussed topic in Hadith as well. So, I mean, why is it that if everything else is being discussed in Hadith and in the Quran regarding the prayer and regarding our so many worship rituals, if something was to be done, it would have been mentioned in both these places. In the absence of that, I am not an authority to originate or to author religion in itself. I cannot say this. What I'm saying is that I don't find any prohibition in the sources.
Thank you. I would like to ask the participants on Zoom, Rusa, if you could ask a question now.
Yes, it's about zakat. If we decide in Ramzan, every Ramzan, that you're going to give a certain amount of money, but you don't dispense it all in that Ramzan because you keep it for the rest of the year when it's needed, is that okay? But you made the niyat to...
Of course, that's fine, because you see, you need to have some person to give it. If you're not given it, you've actually stored it for that person. I mean, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It's like something that has been entrusted to you, and you have just keep it as an amana with you. But in the absence of any convincing or any person who deserves that money, you need to store it. You need to save it.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. With this question, we have come to the conclusion of the series. May Allah bless you, and may we keep having such programs in the future.
Thank you.